Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Easy Learn. And today's topic is the sine rule, within which we're going to be looking at some practice question. If you haven't watched my sine rule explanation video yet, pause right here, check the link in the description below, go understand the concept first, and then come back for solving. So today's question is this one, and it says work out the value of x. Now, as you can see, maybe I could label my triangle, let's suppose this part as A, this one's B, and this one's C, and this one right here is D. Now it says work out the value of x. Now as you can see, my angle A is 40 degrees, angle C is 65 degrees, the B and D here is making a 90-degree, and the length BD is 5 centimeters, CD is 13, and the length AC is x. And my length AC, or perhaps my x, is missing. Now, how do I go about solving this? Now, if I want to find my x and I have two angles with me, so one thing that should be clicking to your mind is that if I have two lengths and two angles, I'm supposed to be using the sine rule, and the sine rule says sine capital A over small a equals sine capital B over small b. Now, considering the fact that I already have two angles in there, so if I take my sine 65, but as you can see that this length right here, that's AB, is not available to me. Similarly, if I take the 40 as my sine B, again, I do not have this length right here. It's unavailable, which means that I need to do something to either find this length, or another thing is that if I want to find my x, the angle that's right opposite to that is also missing. I do not have this angle B, which means again I cannot be using the sine rule that simply. Either I gotta find this length, or maybe this angle, just so that I could grab my x. So for that, let me just begin with finding this angle B. So for that, what do I need to do? Now, if you notice carefully, this is a complete triangle where one of them is 40 degrees, one of the side or one of the angle is 65. And this is making a complete triangle. And as already discussed in most of our videos, that all angles in a triangle are equal to 180 degrees, which means that if one of them is 40 and one of them is 65 and this is x, so if I add up these two angles and if I subtract, or let me just call this as y just so that you don't get confused with this x. So if I have this as y, so if I'm going to be adding 65 and 40, and if I subtract that from the total angle, that is 180 as I know, so I'm going to be getting my y. So I'm just going to do 40 plus 65, that gives me 105, and if I do 180 minus 105, that gives me a 75 degrees, which basically means that my angle B, that's right here, is 75 degrees. Now that I've got my 75 degrees, I can take probably my sine B as 75. So I'm just going to write sine 75 over the B, or as it's given as x. So I'm just going to be taking the sine 75, and the length that's opposite to that is the x. So I have it now. Now if I want to take my sine A, now again, if I want to take my 40 or my 65, now both these lengths are missing. So I need to first find out my length, either one of them, either the AB or the CB. Now, which one's easier to find? Now, if you look carefully, which one's easier to find? This one's not really that easy to find because, again, two of the lengths are missing. Even if I try to use sine rule, again, I wouldn't have one another length with that, because this one's also missing. There's one of them is x, the BC is also missing, AB is also missing, so I cannot really use the sine rule on that to find the AB. So maybe I could do the CB. I can simply find CB. Why can I so easily find CB? Because one of the length, if you look at it, this CBD is a triangle, and in fact it's a right angle triangle. B, D, and C. This is a right angle triangle where two of my lengths are already given to me. and I just gotta find the third length. Now, if you recall from the previous lessons, how do we find lengths of right angled triangle? We simply use the Pythagoras theorem. That is a square plus b square equals c square. You don't really have to do a lot of work in this. You just have to simply try to remember the Pythagoras theorem formula and then apply it. Because whenever we're dealing with right angled triangles, and you have two lengths available to you, then the third length, you can just use the Pythagoras theorem formula and find it out. So, and again, just to remember that A and B are the vertical and the horizontal lengths, and C is always the diagonal length. So, which means that 13 becomes my C, and 5 becomes either the A or B, doesn't really matter. So, I'm just going to be writing 5 squared plus B squared, which I don't have. I'm finding it out. So I'm just going to write CB square because that's the length I'm finding. That's CB. So 5 squared plus CB squared equals C square, which is my 13 square. So 5 square is 25 plus CB squared equals 13 square, that is 169. And if I want to find my CB square, I'm going to be taking the 25 to the other side. And when 25 goes to the other side, because 25 is positive here, when it goes to the other side, the state of 25 changes and it becomes negative, and I have CB square equals 169 minus 25, or negative 25. And then I have CB square equals 169 minus 25 gives me a 144. You can just keep checking the answers on the calculator, or if it's too quick for you, just pause the video and then try to find out and then see if your answers are correct. Okay, so moving on, CB squared equals 144, and then when I take my square to the other side, this is another rule that how positive, when they go to the other side, they turn into negative. How something, if it's in multiplication, goes to the other side, turns into division. Similarly, if a square goes to the other side, it turns into a square root. So square root of 144 is going to be equal, again, you can check that on your calculator, square root of 144 is 12, because 12 times 12 gives us 144. Therefore, the length CB is going to be 12 centimeter. So I have this one as 12 centimeter, and I have this angle as 75. The one opposite to that is x, and now that I've got my 12, the angle right opposite to that is 40. Therefore, we're now pretty close to finding our x. So if I write down here, I already had written before 70 sine 75 over x, and now on this side I can just take sine 40 over the length that's right opposite to that, which is 12 centimeter. So now I have sine 40 over 12 equals sine 75 over x. Now, again, the thing is that if you have an unknown denominator, it's just always good practice to take it to the other side and make it a single equation. Just get rid of the denominators just so that you don't get confused in the end. So 12 is in division with the sine 40. So when it goes to the other side, turns into multiplication. Similarly, x is in division on this side. When it goes to the other side, it turns into multiplication, which means I will be having something like this. X times sine 40 is going to be equal to 12 times sine 75. Now, if I put that on my scientific calculator, now at this point, because you're dealing with sine, cos, or tan, or whatever, this since this is the sine rule, then we'll be using sine, and for that you will need a scientific calculator. And first of all, make sure that your scientific calculator is set on degrees, unless and until somebody asks you to find the answer in radians, then you can keep it radians. Otherwise, it's always degrees. So when I put 12 times sine 75, or sine 75 close bracket times 12, it gives me something like this, 11.5911. It's always good practice to keep it to at least 3 to 4 decimal places while you're solving the equation. Once you're done with the final answer, then you can just round off to maybe 1 or 2 decimal places, but while you're doing it, just keep it to at least 3 4. So x sine 40 is equal to 11.5911. And now I need to find my x. So for that, I need to isolate the x, or I need to make x the subject. And in order to make x the subject, I need to take everything away from x. Whatever is attached to the x goes to the other side. And when sine 40 goes to the other side, because it's in multiplication with the x, when it goes to the other side, the state of it changes and it turns into division. So when sine 40 going over there becomes x equals 11.5911, and that divided by sine 40. And again, if you do that on your scientific calculator, make sure your calculator is set on degrees, and then 11.591 divided by sine 40 gives me 18.03. Or I could just keep it as x equals 18 centimeter. So this is going to be my final answer, where my x is equal to 18 centimeter. So this length right here, that's the AC, or the x, is 18. Again, just to have an overview, first of all, it's very important when we're dealing with questions like these that we always try to remember that um, all the angles in a triangle are equal to 180, and this information is going to give us the third angle that is missing. Once we're done with that, then you have to kind of recall back to the Pythagoras theorem and the other knowledge that you have in order to figure out that this is a right angle triangle, because this is making a box here. So this box indicates a 90-degree, and whenever we have a 90-degree triangle or a right angle triangle, we use the Pythagoras theorem, that's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Using that, you're going to find this missing length. Once you have your missing length, once you have your missing angle, and now that you're having two lengths, two angles and two lengths in which one is there and one is missing, then you just simply use the sine rule, that sine A over A equals sine B over B. You use that, find your answer, and you get your x. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, any confusions, or perhaps any suggestions you would like to give, just drop them down in the comment section below. And thank you so much for watching Easy Learn. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Until next time.